Jumbo, welcome. So glad that you're joining us. You are listening to Black Power Media Reloaded, and this program is Operation Power, a voice for Black radical politics and revolutionary change. My name is Inez Barron. I'm the co-host, along with my husband, the bold, the outspoken, the indomitable, the one, the only, the unbought, and the unbossed.
Charles Barron, your humble servant. I appreciate all those comments, but I'm your humble servant, and it is an honor to be with you, with my wife of 43 years. Stunningly beautiful.
Thank you.
Intellectually brilliant, the one and only Inez Barron.
Thank you so much. We've got an exciting program for you today. Our program is entitled Memorializing Assata Shakur. We have nothing to lose but our chains, and we've got two exciting guests, Lumumba and Monifa Bandele. They'll be joining us shortly. But we first want to start our program with a libation. We understand that we are where we are in this point of our struggle along the movement for liberation because of the sacrifices and the work that have been done by our ancestors. We may not know all their names. We may not know any specific things that they have done, but they have come this far and given us the torch to carry on. And we want to honor them with this libation video.
For African people, nothing important happens without a libation. And so for this very important presentation, we begin by the pouring of libation. We pour libation first to our first ancestor, to that hidden one who, though hidden, manifests in all things as all things, that God goddess idea in the universe by any and all names. To our first ancestor, we pour libation, Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the first people on this planet, mothers and fathers of all mankind, flashpoint of the human family. To those ancestors we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the ones who first gave birth to the idea of civilization, knew we would need a form of governance, and they nurtured that idea along the Nile until it reached its zenith in Kemet. There they built these gigantic monuments as evidence of that great civilization, and they carved instructions on the walls of temples and tombs for us, so we would never forget. To those ancestors we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because over time they put together all the tenets of civilization and they took those ideas and left the continent. They were the people of the first Exodus. They left Africa and went all over the world and peopled the world. To those ancestors we pour libation, Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they did not sit on their laurels. They continued to improve, continued to evolve, and at each point of evolution, they again would leave the continent and settle and resettle the planet. They met themselves coming and going. To those ancestors we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time, they found themselves the object of a forced exodus when they were kidnapped, shackled, cargoed, shipped out of Africa and enslaved in diasporas around the world. To those ancestors we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to the ancestors left at home, the very young, the aged, the infirm, left to reinvent themselves, depleted of us, human resources. But they were enjoined by us in the diasporas, both objects of a global myopia that ruptured the soul of a people as it ravaged a continent. To those ancestors we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time they began to remember who and what they were. Because no matter where they had been dropped off, they still retained bits and pieces of who and what they were. They retained that African core that described them. They began to remember bits and pieces of a song. They began to remember lines from a rhythm. They began to remember dances that they did in ancient times. They began to remember those ancient drum beats that they now beat out on bare skin. And so to those ancestors we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to them because
Asheo.
Asheo.
We want to always give honor to our ancestors. we wouldn't be where we are without them having made those sacrifices. Well, once again, we've got an exciting program memorializing our sister Assata Shakur. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We've got two great guests that'll be joining us shortly, and they are Lumumba and Monifa Bandele, and they are husband and wife power couple.
That's
and
right.
We're so pleased that they will be joining us shortly. And they are both members of the Malcolm X Grass Movement Committee. And Monifa was, in fact, a part of the host committee for the memorial program that was held this past weekend.
I'm going to sound like an old man now, but I'm so proud of these two. You know, they grew up in the movement. We had a very close relationship with Lumumba's father, Adeyemi Bandele, and all those involved in the East Cultural Center, Baba Jitu, and so many others, and Sophia Bandele, and just so many great, great people in the Black United Front. But Lumumba and I did a lot of good work, and he was very instrumental in seeing to it that I got to see some of the political prisoners. We went to see Herman Bell together, Jalil Montekim together, and even when they get out, people don't know, Lumumba and Monifa, they help these brothers and sisters after they get out.
Yes.
Because it's one thing to get them out, it's another thing to maintain. So we were so honored to see that they were part of the organizing of it, but especially Monifa, to see her on stage doing some of the moderation, being a moderator, and just looking as just elegantly, intelligently, and beautiful.
Always.
So it's just honored to have both of you on. So I'm gonna kick it back to Inez so we can get the first clip.
Just before we have our guests appear on stage, we're gonna have a brief clip of Assata Shakur, her remarks at the memorial, the daughter of Assata Shakur, and her remarks at the memorial service.
I want to thank you all for coming here tonight to be with my family. Thank you so much for bringing with you your love and your prayers and your appreciation for the beauty that my mother brought to this world during her 78 years of life. Tonight is a liberating moment for my family. After more than 50 years of isolation and 50 years of quietly counteracting the mainstream narrative amongst ourselves, this is a liberating moment that allows my family to affirm the truth of who my mother was, with people who can appreciate the anguish of what this history has been for my family, and the beauty of what my mother was fighting for. Tonight, I want those who loved my mother to find some gentle solace in this bittersweet moment. Despite the throbbing loss, and despite the silence left in the absence, I hope there is some comfort in this moment of triumph, in this moment that gives proof to the notion that every spawned breath of freedom cannot be quelled. Despite an overwhelming display of vitriol, there is the burgeoning resistance that always rises from the muddied wake of oppression. The fact that my mother did not die in chains. There is triumph today after all of the illegal tactics to suppress a movement, after the brutality of incarceration in the most inhumane conditions, after the uncertainty of a sprouted dawn. There is triumph in that my mother's revolutionary spirit could not be broken. And neither could the spirit of her comrades, and neither could the spirit of the people who recognized her virtue and stood with her in solidarity. You are here today as evidence that the river spirit of the people cannot be dredged and flows onward from our ancestors who have died, fulfilling their duty to sway us closer to freedom. I want to give thanks to all of the people who kept my mother free. A modern-day underground railroad of people that cherished her and ensured her safety. Words cannot express my infinite gratitude for your selfless act of love and for your sacrifice. And although we are gathered here tonight in the wake of my mother's passing, I want to assure you that this story is not etched in a lifeless past. It is alive in all of you who are present here today, and all of you who love my mother and still love her, and all of you that protected her physical body and now continue to protect her spirit and her legacy. It is alive in those of you who have studied her words and will continue her tradition of radical struggle, of audacity to transform this world, to dismantle the caustic framework that erodes the righteousness of the human soul, and to reimagine a society that actually values all human life.
There we have it, the daughter of Assata Shakur. And now we're going to bring our two guests into the studio, Lumumba and Monifa Bandele, joining us to talk about the great Assata Shakur. We know she was targeted by COINTELPRO, whose mission was to deter, to destroy, to disrupt, and discredit all of those liberation movements and organizations, and targeted Assata many times and had her arrested and brought to trial for attempted murder, for murder, and all of those charges were either acquitted, she was acquitted, or the charges were dismissed. So it was all fabricated. And we know that you've got some great ideas that you want to share, some history and some stories. So we will start with you, both coming on. We'll yield to the ladies first. My sister Monifa, you can open up with any kinds of remarks that you would like to share at this time.
Just really sitting and basking in the beautiful words of Kikuyu. I do believe that just who Kikuyu is also a testament to Mama Assata, that she, as a mother, people talk about her as a freedom fighter, as a hero, as so many things to all of us. Sometimes they forget that she's a mother. And that always came across every time we interacted with her. She loved to be around young people. She loved to pour into us, to give us assignments, also to love on us. And you felt that maternal energy every time that you were around her. So I just wanted to pause for a second on that and thank Kikuyu, not only for sharing her mother with the world, but also being a part of that host committee and allowing the community to have a very public celebration of her life. Because as we know, not only has Mama Assata been under threat, the family, constant attacks, FBI following them, all of these types of things are what our freedom fighters' families go through. So I really wanted to center her, as did everyone who was a part of this celebration, as do you all here on the show, by opening up with her. But I'll talk about my first experience meeting Assata, and then we can go to Lumumba. But early in the 90s, I was still, yeah, I hadn't even, I hadn't even graduated yet.
Mhm.
I was able to go on a trip, and this was before the World Youth Festival, because a lot of people talked about meeting her at the International Festival for Students and Youth. Before that, the Cuban Women's Federation had a women's conference, and I was able to go down with some of the elder women in the New African People's Organization and the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And it was there that I first met Mama Assata Shakur. And
Mhm.
she was amazing. You know how when you read about someone and just, I also
Mhm.
remember as a kid seeing all those posters, Assata's welcome
Mhm.
here. You almost make a person a mythological figure, right? You make them
Right.
like a Marvel superhero.
Mhm.
But here she was, real, live, in the flesh, and she was just as caring and loving and yearning and missing her family, you know, just like anybody else. And one of the things it made us, all of us on the trip, realize is that really anybody, we all can and should be a revolutionary, right? She
Right.
didn't have a X-Men super strength, you know, she hadn't drank the super soldier serum. She was a strong, a very highly intelligent, of course, and very brilliant Black woman who decided that she would use her life to change the conditions of her people. And
Mm.
that was a noble intention. It was a brave intention. And we walked away knowing that we too can change the world.
Wow. Mm. Lumumba, go for it, man.
Yeah, I mean, ditto to all of what Monifa said, and thank you all for having this conversation. We have a responsibility to make sure her legacy is properly presented
Mhm.
Yes.
and that it is introduced to those who do not know her, and that it continues to live way beyond her family's lineage.
Mhm.
You know, we consider her our modern day Mother Moses, our modern day Harriet Tubman,
Mm.
you know, and that will be the case if we make it the case. If
Right.
we are able to uplift her in the way that her legacy deserves, um, if we are able to effectively counter the narrative of the state, do all of those things, and be very creative with how we talk about our freedom fighters. She deserves that. We need that. Like
Mhm.
our children's children need to know the legacy of which they come from. That we
That's
have always had a legacy of resistance. And one
Always.
of the major lessons that her life teaches us is that we have a history of making the impossible possible.
that's right.
They said that she was going to die in prison,
Mm.
right? We as a movement decided to make that an untrue statement.
Right. That's
You
right.
know, so there's so many lessons that come out of that, and you know, I'm very much honored to be able to have gotten assignments from her, and it exactly was that, assignments. um you know, but part of what makes her this such huge figure is that she reminds us that, as Monifa said, this is all a choice.
That's
Like,
right.
we know what we're up against for the most part, and we have the ability to make a choice if we're going to do something to protect our community, if we're going to do something to advance the liberation of our people. Those are all choices, and we can decide to do that or not.
That's right.
And when you are able to sit at the foot of someone who's made those choices, and you're able to see the sacrifices that they've made,
Hmm.
and make a real life assessment of what's at stake, you understand what's expected of you. And so I'm really appreciative that she's been able to touch us in ways that you know, we couldn't imagine. And I'm really appreciative that we were able to bring other people that she was able to touch.
Mhm.
You know, our Black August hip hop project
Right. That
was
was powerful.
born, you know, out of a conversation with both she and Mama Nahanda, who was another political exile who happened to also be a fugitive of the state. One of the charges that she was
Mhm.
charged with was assisting in the liberation of Assata Shakur.
Mm. Mhm.
And so both of them were very clear about what needed to happen, and you know, told us that y'all into this rap thing, right? Well, why don't y'all use this rap thing to talk about our movement? Why don't y'all use this rap thing to raise awareness about our political prisoners specifically. Why don't y'all use this rap thing to raise money to help support their defense committees?
Mm-hmm.
That was the charge. We came back to the States. And that was 97. Monifa referenced the World Youth Festival. That was the festival that many of us were at.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back to the States, and a year later, we did our first Black August Hip Hop Project right in Lower Manhattan with some rap artists who all donated their time. Nobody was paid. And we were able to take some of the proceeds of that to help support some of the defense committees over the years. There was an international component of that as well. We went back to Cuba and participated in the Cuban Hip Hop Festival. But that was the time also where we were able to actually bring these rap artists to sit down with, learn from, be touched by, and talk to our political exiles over there. And they were transformed.
Mm-hmm.
They were transformed. It's not a coincidence that Common was at the memorial this past weekend. It's not a coincidence that he happened to have made that song for Assata. It's because of that trip that he was touched by her, and he came back home and recorded a song about Assata Shakur. And I want to put this in context because at the Malcolm X Grassroots movement, we were doing a lot of work and still are around political prisons, but we were also at that time a part of the Hands Off Assata committee. And we were, I thought, doing a decent job of making sure people knew who she was and all of this other stuff, but our ability to reach the people was very limited to what we had at our disposal. We didn't have much internet use at that time, so we had a bunch of trifold pamphlets about who she was, some posters. We did all of these, poetry readings, open mics and stuff, and we thought we were doing a good job. But were it not for Common, we really aren't able to quantify now how many people over the world know who she is because of that song. Right. And so we understand that, this is a part of what we call a success of Black August, but it's also a part of her charge. She wanted us to make sure that we use our own tools, our own resources, the things that we are very good at for the service of liberation. And it's an honor to do that. It's an honor to continue to lift up that legacy. And it was an honor to be a part of this memorial this past weekend.
Well, I want to do a couple of things. One, I don't know his name now, but Most Def supported us when we had our Hands Off Assata resolution for City Hall. Matter of fact, he came to City Hall.
Yes, he did.
He supported that. I got him to my biggest trouble with that resolution, especially when I was talking about freeing Jalil Montague. Boy, did I get beat up, but it was still raising the consciousness. So, with that, could you talk? I want to do two things. One, talk more about this memorial, because I was there. It was like over 2,000 people. And, it's just like every speaker that got up, you can almost feel the unity of spirit. How sometimes you get a crescendo of claps, a few people clapped here, and this was like, boom, in a second, everybody was united in responses. It was something so spiritually powerful. And I believe because of the spirit of Assata. So I want you to do two things. One, talk more about the memorial, the different kind of people that came and the positive of it. Then I'm going to play a little clip from Lennox Hines and then talk more about Cuba and how important it is for us to fight the American system and keeping their hands off Cuba as Cuba is under serious attack.
Monifa, you want to talk about the...
Yeah, what you felt in that room and what I believe everyone felt was a unity of ancestors. There is a Black Liberation Army cadre of folks that have all transitioned into the realm of the ancestors almost back to back. So I was there. I felt like I was feeling Baba Sekou Odinga. Like I could visualize Baba Matula Shakur, Baba Bilal Sunni Ali, like all of many of the people who are part of a particular unit that she was in. There was a joining, almost like you feel them together, and also a lot of their children and family was in the audience sitting together. So I feel like there was this kind of conjuring of our ancestors, as you open, pouring libations to ancestors, because they're very much present with us all the time. And they were absolutely present in that moment when you think about Marilyn Buck and all of the different people that staffed that Underground Railroad that Kikuya talked about in the clip that allow for her to be liberated and be free in Cuba. Many of those folks are also ancestors. So there's definitely like a unity of spirit that was there going into it. People were like, oh, are you afraid you're going to get trolled? And what if the police show up? Or what if there's counter demonstrations? But for the weeks leading up, you could feel that protection. I literally felt like I was protected by Baba Sekou Obenga, right? And I believe that we absolutely were. And so that's what I'll say about the energy of the memorial, and wondering what Lumumba thinks as well.
Yeah, I mean, ditto on this, on the energy. It was absolutely there. And part of that energy also, I think, is a reflection of how Mama Assata touched people that she never physically touched.
That's right.
You know, her book transformed lives. I mean, how many people today will tell you that that book changed me? Right? How many people will tell you that that book is what politicized me? That book is what helped ground me in this work. So there are people who were there, full tears, never met her, never met her family, but she belongs to us, right? And the idea that she had transitioned, that, you know, as Kikuya said, transitioned, not in chains, was something that hit people hard. Like, this is, I think people understood the significance of this moment. And so for us, you know, to be asked to join this committee, to again take on another assignment from the Shakur family, to ask Monifa to be on the committee. They called me later to do whatever these other assignments were. No questions asked. We on it. You know, it's an honor. You know, it's an honor.
And I want to say one more thing too about in the room. Another person who they told us would die and change was her co-defendant, Baba Sundiata Kohli.
That's right.
And so every time we were at the podium to look down and see him sitting there free, smiling, fist in the air, right? I mean, you know, you know that the assignment she gave, most of the assignments she gave was to urge all the young people she came in contact with to do whatever they could to free her comrades. So to see them not only come home, but to see her co-defendant sitting there at her celebration of life, that's the energy.
So Monifa, I see you in the business of mind reading, because I was just about to mention that, so I can move to the next thing. But yeah, it was just an honor to see him. Now, you know who my man is. I mean, I just love this brother so much, his spirit, and that is Jamal Joseph. You know, my man, I mean, the Panther baby.
That's right, Panther baby. Yeah.
So it was good to see him there and making his remarks. So I want to focus on Cuba a little bit, but so let's take this clip by Lennox Hines. It's a short one, and from his presentation, we'll just get into Cuba.
He then leaned over and said to me, Lennox, I read your description of Assata, and I totally disagree with your description of Assata as a terrorist. We in Cuba believe, and under international law, we granted her asylum as a political refugee. We will never give her. Cuba never submitted or bent to U.S. political or economic pressure concerning Assata. There are plans now to invade Cuba. It is no secret. The CIA operatives who are among you tonight. Let us send a message to them to take back back to their bosses. To get to Cuba, they must come through us.
All right now, if you notice that elegant, beautiful, powerful sister standing next to him, that's our guest. And then the brother that was up there with his brother Akinyele Amawale Umoja, he wrote the book, We Will Shoot Back. So that was a very, very good clip. Cuba, we did get a chance to go to Cuba, you know, and we got a chance to talk to Assata by phone. She was very encouraging. And she was more concerned about us than she was herself. She didn't want us to be connected to her being we were political figures and figured we'd go back and get in trouble. So, but she was so encouraging and showed her appreciation. And we were able to visit, you know, a lot of places in Cuba and to learn from that revolution. I remember in my days in working with the Black Panthers that the Vince Ferramos Brigade, when people were going to Cuba to cut sugar cane. And then we had some exchanges way back there with the Cuban people who are resilient people. So the beautiful thing is, like Castro, Assata died and transitioned on her own terms, not in the belly of the beast, not in some colonial capitalist pig cell, but on her own terms in Cuba.
You know, it's such an interesting an example that she has given, talking about being inspirational, talking about not giving up, maintaining that spirit. And again, as you've talked about, Monifa, the sacrifice that she made, you know, the ability to be inspirational, encouraging, and sacrificial is a model for all of us to look at. And the people came behind her and loved her, the people here and the people in Cuba as well.
And we always say when Africa called, Cuba answered. And now Cuba's calling. So African people from Angola, especially, African people from South Africa, especially, African people from Mozambique, you name it, all the revolutionary movements in the 60s, Cuba sent doctors, technicians, soldiers. Ernesto Che Guevara spilled blood. His people spilled blood. Wouldn't be no Angola if it wasn't for Cuba. So talk about the importance of us connecting, supporting Cuba in their fight against American imperialism.
Yeah, you know, I think we should also broaden that because it's not just continental Africa. We're talking about the diaspora.
Oh, that's right.
When Black America called, Cuba answered. When the Caribbean called, Cuba answered. When Latin America called, Cuba answered. So it's important that we, you know, broaden that because it's not just Africa that owes a debt, you know, to Cuba. And in fact, it is most of the global South and even other parts of the North. You know, Cuba was the first to offer up aid, you know, after Katrina, a few all these other things, Cuba has offered up. You know, while this nation, its favorite export is military, Cuba was exporting doctors, professionals, doctors. So that says a lot about what, you know, the nations themselves.
That's right.
I'll say this. I think one of the things I learned from El Comandante, he said in one of his speeches that the most dangerous weapon of the United States is not its military, it's its propaganda.
That's right. That's so true.
The ability for it to shape how people see themselves, how the people see other parts of the world, see other nations, is its most dangerous thing. I first went to Cuba in 84, I think, 83, 84, as a young member, actually as a delegate of the Black United Front. It was a Cuban pioneer camp. So similar to the World Youth Festival,
Right.
it was gatherings of children. So not just college youth, but literal children. So we are all mostly preteens and early teens. Young people from Namibia, from El Salvador, Nicaragua, Palestine, Libya, literally thousands of young people from all over the world. And we came representing the United States. Before I went, I expected to see in Cuba, again, based on the popular narrative, people in the street walking in straight lines, being corralled by military men and machine guns because there's no freedom. You know, this is a child's mind, right? You know, and so I'm thinking, but when I got there, it was the most refreshing, liberating kind of experience to see, number one, such a large population of Afro-Cubans who look like they belonged on Fulton Street in Bedford, right? Were it not for the language, you know, you would think that I was home. But seeing them be able to have a population of people who are able to access things that we struggle to access here. So the literacy rates there were almost non-existent. Illiteracy rates were almost non-existent, right? The homelessness rates were almost non-existent. The education was free. The healthcare, of course, is top notch. And so to get a whole reframing of what that was powerful for me, and coming back to the States and talking to my 6th grade class with a slideshow. This is where I went. This is where it helped. I had a left white teacher also who was excited for me to do this. But Cuba has always made itself available to us, and we owe a debt.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
We owe a debt to Cuba.
Monifa?
I'll just say similarly. So in 1997, 15,000 student and youth came to that World Youth Festival, and 800 came from the United States in defiance of a travel ban. So we were breaking national law to travel down to this conference. And I just remember the buzz too, because like even reporters were asking us, aren't you afraid? What if they strip you of your passport? You know, what could happen? And part of the beauty was like, as college students, we were like, oh, okay, whatever. We got there, I was like, wow, man, I should have maybe told my mom I left the country. Like, you know, like really just kind of in the moment, recognizing that the embargo was inhumane and unjust, and that if something is unjust and inhumane, then you should object to it. You know, you should defy it. And getting there, and again, like Lumumba said, being with students who were from everywhere from Angola to Korea to all over Latin America, but we were very much centered by Mama Assata and Mama Nahanda. They were like our mamas on the ground, right? Taking us around. And they taught us not only about the relief efforts and the military efforts, but that Cuba's real danger was that it was a beacon of hope, right?
That's
Will other nations be inspired by the Cuban Revolution? You know, let's think like Grenada and all these other places. There were you could tell there was constant fear, not only of what Cuba was doing, but of what it could potentially mean and what it could potentially do around the world. And that's what Mama Assata and Mama Nahanda kept telling us about, is that just like you feel inspired, how you came here once, and now you're like, y'all can't tell me that Sekou Odinga will never be free, because I've seen what people have said was impossible. So now I don't have that limitation. They said that's the danger, right? That's what Cuba really threatens, is that U.S. propaganda that Lumumba talked about.
And you know, part of what's important to mention about the delegation that went to the World Youth Festival also, when we were there, we got an announcement that Senator Jesse Helms had made an announcement that all U.S. citizens on the Senate floor, all U.S. citizens that attended this, what do you say, should be rounded up and arrested on the way back, or not allowed back in. One of the two. There were threats. Wow. There were threats that were made while we were there, and we didn't hear it directly. We heard the Cuban officials say, you know, they announced it. Well, this was just announced. Wow. So it helps put in perspective. Yes. You know, again, what we were experiencing and being there in real time and hearing the kind of verbal aggression that the U.S. has always espoused. Right. And we know we're in a different moment right now. I don't think I could have imagined the blockade having a worse kind of impact until this year.
Yes.
Right, I don't think I could have imagined it. I don't think it. Right. I could have even thought up how worse it could have gotten. And here we are, where hospitals are unable to provide the health care that they are required to give. Schools are not functioning because they don't have the power to function. There's very little mobility around because people don't have the gas to move around.
Right, that's right.
You know, what's always understood to me is that there's a misassessment. People believe that it is the Cuban government that is the power that is keeping Cuba sustained. It's the people of Cuba.
It's the people. That's right.
It's the people of Cuba. The resilience that they have, the fact that they've created all of these other mutual aid kinds of dynamics to be able to support each other in this moment. And don't get it twisted. They're still suffering, but they are figuring out how to survive. And people have been donating solar panels. There's going to be a lot more of that coming in so that they don't have to rely on fuel to be able to power the health facilities and educational facilities. But the resilience that's there is so clear. And the analysis, you know, while we're there, people asking us about stuff here, you know, what's up with all of the police killings that are happening over there? What are y'all doing about that? You know, so the analysis is so sharp by Cuban people, and it's not the opposite. You know, we don't know what's happening there. So again, I think it's real important that we begin to reassess what we owe.
That's what happened with us. When we went there, it was mostly with the people. We did meet with President Alacan. I think he was the president at that time. Raul was out of the country. But our most impressive thing was two things. One, when they were struggling economically, they called it a special period.
Yeah.
When the struggle here, they said the Great Depression. You know, this country had more than Cuba during the Great Depression, but Cuba called it a special period. You may not be able to eat as much meat. You're going to have to share your automobile, your car, you know, all of that stuff. And we was witnessing all of this. And we were right out there in the streets with the people when all of this was happening. But the thing that hit us, and we'll never forget, when we went to the International Medical School and we were speaking to the students, two students said, Councilman Barron, they were from East New York.
Yes.
We had two students that were getting a free, tuition-free medical doctor's training in Cuba, and all they had to do is learn how to speak Spanish and commit to bring it back to their communities to work for the people. Cuba is a very special place, and that's why when we was growing up in the 60s, yes, it was Cuba, you know, it was Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana, liberated, Patrice Lumumba, the Congo, liberated, Julius Nyerere, and liberated, and Tanzania, Bandele and Algeria, liberated, all of this revolutionary stuff. Thomas Sankara, you know, in Burkina Faso. So when we saw all of that, then we saw the counter-revolutionary forces come in, and a lot of that turned out into neo-colonialism, as Kwame Nkrumah would say, the last day of imperialism. So I'm going to play Daruba, his clip, and then after that, you can have some closing commentary, okay?
Absolutely.
Solidarity and greetings to all gathered to commemorate and reflect on the life and legacy of Assata Shakur. I am indeed appreciative of this opportunity to address this momentous gathering of comrades, friends, and family of my comrade Assata. I know that many of you gathered here today may not have known Assata, but are instilled with and inspired by her lifelong resistance and revolutionary struggle against the white supremacist settler construct that is the United States of America. I also appreciate that some of you gathered here today actually knew Assata, aided and supported her during her long exile in Cuba. And to these comrades, I salute you and express my profound gratitude. Finally, to those gathered in this iconic Riverside Church in Harlem, who in their own way have struggled for the liberation of African people, oppressed people, the downtrodden, the disregarded, wretched of the earth, I salute you. We may seem as strangers to one another, but we are only comrades who have never met. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell the unvarnished truth about Comrade Assata. It was during the early 70s when our retaliatory resistance against the armed agents of racist state terrorism assumed organized intensity. Police murder of black youth, accompanied by the plague of heroin addiction, informed the legacy and legend of Assata you now pay homage to. Few of you gathered here today would have ever heard of Assata were it not for the emergence of the Black Liberation Army. I say this because despite scholarly deceitfulness surrounding the BLA, Assata was a soldier in the centuries-old war against African people, a war that began with the North Atlantic slave trade, a racist war that continued to this very moment by violent and nonviolent means. The scholarly deceit I speak of lay in the denial of this war and the deceptions that black people fought for civil rights rather than for human rights, and that human rights can be granted by the inhumane rather than appropriated by those criminalized and defamed. This fact is important because Assata was not an innocent victim of police repression, shot wantonly with her hands raised in submission. She was a revolutionary, and revolutionaries are never victims of injustice. How many freedom fighters were wantonly killed in the struggle for the liberation of their people? Medgar Evers, Amilcar Cabral, Che Guevara, some murdered even while surrendering. Facts speak louder than fiction. In 1971, Assata wasn't a designated FBI COINTELPRO target. She was a medical cadre of the National Committee to Combat Fascism in Washington Heights, Harlem, New York. The NCCF chapters were formations of the original Black Panther Party. Indeed, by 1972, COINTELPRO had already achieved some of its significant victories with the assassination of Malcolm X and of Dr. Martin Luther King and the breakup of SNCC. Earlier in late 1971, COINTELPRO was reconfigured as NUKIL and CHESROB. Both were acronyms for the FBI's repressive campaign authorized by the Nixon White House, specifically targeting the emergence of the Black Liberation Army and its clandestine leadership, one of whom was Joanne Chesimard, hence the acronym CHESROB for Chesimard robberies. I choose to remind everyone of these historical facts rather than repeat historical fantasies of Assata's victimhood. Why? Because Assata was a warrior in the tradition of Harriet Tubman, in the tradition of Denmark Vesey, and our ancestors who resisted the brutality, murder, and enslavement of African people for over 300 years. In the struggle for freedom, revolutionaries are never victims or innocents. Assata was not an unfortunate victim like George Floyd or Clifford Glover. She was a conscious, committed, revolutionary freedom fighter. And in this historical moment, we should be mindful of that. We should be mindful that white supremacy and the American empire are now in precipitous decline. Besieged by the global South emerging unity, white America has become increasingly lawless, and like a rabid dog backed into the corner, capitalist white supremacist state, violence, no limits. The land that gave Assata refuge, Cuba, now faces imminent attack by the U.S. in its attempt to reassert the Monroe Doctrine of the 19th century in the Western Hemisphere. The people of Iran are under attack by the U.S. and its Zionist white supremacist cohorts, Israel. We must demand peace in Western Asia and an end to Zionist settler expansionism. My beloved comrades and friends, we should not merely eulogize Assata. We should live like her. In this historical moment, revolutionary resistance to the racist, imperialistic, and violent enemies of humanity require nothing less. Long live the spirit of Assata Shakur. Long live the independence of the Cuban people.
Long live
the spirit of Assata Shakur. That was Brother Lumumba Ben Wahad, a political prisoner himself. He's over in Africa now, living in Ghana. I believe, and one of the co-founders of the Black Liberation Army. So we appreciate his remarks. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking to Dr. Rosemary Mealy. She made a powerful presentation.
Yes, she did.
And we kind of like left it off here because we want them to listen tomorrow to see that. We'll be on WBAI from 5 to 6 p.m. on our program, Speaking Truth to Power, Dr. Rosemary Mealy. Powerful, powerful presentation. When we mention Assata Shakur, we have to mention Afeni Shakur and Sister Joan Bird. Those two sisters in the Black United Front's Harlem chapter were awesome. Everybody knows Sister Afeni was Tupac's mother, and Assata was his aunt. And the Shakur family, talking about you got assignments. Don't talk to Matula Shakur. If you ever talk to Matula Shakur, you're going to get some serious assignments. My son and I, Jawanza, we went to visit them in Atlanta. Boy, do we have some assignments. So I just wanted to mention those things and then have you make some closing remarks. Now, you know, about the Sahel revolution in West Africa, you know, people are so trumpetized that they don't realize that revolution is on the rise. And that the Sahel revolution in South Africa is setting the model for what can happen all over Africa. And even the BRICS, although that's not a relationship made in heaven, there's a lot of contradictions there. But Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now 20 other countries. And Cuba is on that. So we want to see how much, you know, the people of China and Russia are going to support Cuba. I heard there's some support coming in, but they supported the Sahel revolution a lot. So for your two closing remarks, where do we go from here?
I'll start, and Monifa, let you close out. I'll say for your listeners, before I'm giving assignments also. That's one of the legacies things that Matulu gave us a bunch, and of course our sisters in Cuba did as well. I would suggest people take a minute to watch the recording of Fidel Castro's visit to New York in '95, I believe it was. And Rosemary Mealy spoke right before Fidel Castro spoke. There's a lot of history there. And I think it would help really to lay a good basis for this conversation that you'll be having tomorrow with her and help ground many people in what this relationship between our liberation struggle and Cuba has been. It's not something that is new. It is not something that is nostalgic. It is actually built on very tangible solidarity. And for folks to be able to have a conversation, understanding what that history is important. I'll also add in the analysis of these nations that are pushing back on this imperialist practice, there's hope coming out of the tiny island of Barbados. Prime Minister Mia Mottley. And I think because she's a woman, she doesn't get a lot of the attention, but the kind of bravery that she has, and she's been on record for supporting Cuba. She's been on record for defending Cuba and for really calling for the defense of the Cuban doctors throughout the Caribbean. I think that they're in that particular nation is some hope. And I want people to pay attention to that and make sure that we protect her, that we protect initiatives that are coming out of Barbados, because that's going to be very important. And so thank you for making time for us to have this conversation. Thank you for lifting up the names of our freedom fighters, for engaging people so they understand this legacy, long legacy that we have. I appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also extend that thanks and thank you, Baba Daruba, for your statement and all of the people that were there. What's next? We quoted Fidel Castro earlier about the most dangerous weapon is America's propaganda. We're the counter narrative. Everybody out there listening, understand that you have an assignment to disrupt that propaganda in any way that you can. You have to be that rock in the stream, right? To say, no, this is not a terrorist. This is not a criminal. This is a freedom fighter. No, this is not a rogue nation. This is a sovereign country. And every time we use our platforms, our bodies to counter that narrative and to push back, that's exactly the role that we should be playing, especially those of us who are inside of the United States. If we don't push back and disrupt it, then it kind of is able to go out there and cause all of that confusion. And you see that people on the continent are having diaspora wars similar to what's been fermenting here. And we're just like, whoa, it's poisonous, this propaganda. That's a big part. But join on to the excursions and people going to the island. I believe that IBW is there now. They took a group to bring supplies. And if you can't do that, there's something else that you can do. But in any way that you can disrupt, one of the things that Mama Assata taught us while we were there was what Baba Daruba just mentioned, that she was a medic, right? And she talked about that revolution is yes, it could be about armed struggle, it could be about all kinds of struggle, but it's also about providing for your people, right? That if your people don't have health care, that you train to be able to provide them health care. In the spirit of Dr. Matula Shakur, if your community has a drug use overdose, then you learn acupuncture to stem those things, that you yourself be the agent for change. And I think that's what's next. And then I will end by quoting Brother Lumumba Bandele, what he said at that program. He said, "May our actions be the most fitting tribute to the legacy of Mama Assata Shakur, more than our words, more than our letters, more than our prayers at night that nobody hears. May our actions speak louder than words in continuing her legacy to carry it on."
Right on. Inez?
Well, certainly your actions and the organizations that you're a part of and provide leadership for, and the events that you have and sponsor, and the influence that you have with young people certainly are a tribute to what you're saying. One of the comments is, such a great and powerful show that has me thirsting for a part 2 and 3. So that's an invitation. We'll have to extend an opportunity for you to come back
and that's from Joyce Scott Praber, who's with Operation Power. We want to thank both of you so much, and remember, we're going to be free. We ain't just fighting for voting rights, we're fighting for freedom, and that we got to realize that no empires last forever. All great empires rise and fall. Y'all remember the British Empire. Sun never set on it. Now they're little cloudy mudclat in England talking about Brexit. So we are definitely on the rise. Every empire falls. The American empire is on the decline. The American dollar is being devalued. But we, in the belly of the beast, 51.2 million. And we, on the continent of Africa, 1.4 billion. We, in the Caribbean, in South America, and Central America, over 200-300 million. And we have the resources in all of those areas that can take care of the whole world. Now it must take care of ourselves. So we end this program like we end all our programs. The truth shall set you free, and power is the great equalizer. Black power.
Black power. Thank you.
Thank you.